Hello YouTube, welcome back. Happy New Year to you all, and here is the first video of the year. So this week we're going to make a reproduction of a wrought iron medieval trowel, and it's based on an archaeological drawing I came across in a publication by Ian Goodall entitled The Medieval Blacksmith and His Products, and I believe the original trowel was excavated at York. So I've taken some dimensions off the drawing and scribbled them down on my notepad. And I will be forging from a bar of wrought iron which is 3/4 of an inch wide by 1/2 inch thick. So I've marked up the wrought iron in two places. The first mark is at 3 inches from the end and the second mark is at 7 inches from the end. So I will centre dot these to make my life a bit easier and wang it in the fire. So as always, make sure your fire is nice and tall so that you have a nice neutral layer to put the metal in. And give it a good scrub as well, because we're going to be forging this down quite thin. So you need it to be clean. Now, I've never come across a medieval spring fuller. I'm sure they would have used a top and bottom fuller. However, I work alone, so I am doing a double set down over the edge of the anvil. So have a go at this, because it's quite good practice for your hammer skills. The nice thing about wrought iron is that at a decent temperature it's like butter to work with. It's really lovely. So you can see that moved quite quickly. So this is the tang of the trowel. So when you've done your double set down, draw it out to be about 1/2 inch square. That's 12mm square for those of you who prefer your measurements in French. And we're just forging the tang like this for the time being because it's going to give us a bit something to hold on to with the tongs. So once you've forged out the proto tang, grab your chisel and using the cutting plate of the anvil, cut off at the second mark. And that is all the material that you need for your chisel. Now, some of you might remember those tongs from a previous video, a while ago now. As you can see, they hold it beautifully. So, because this is comes down to a rounded point, I am just putting a short stubby taper on the end so that when I do forge it to a rounded triangular section, I don't get a carp's mouth at the end. So the next stage is we shall do a set down on the blade side of the tang, and that will just allow us to get a nice angle on there when we actually bend the tang upwards. So start off with nice heavy hammer blows, and then I will actually continue the set down with the cross peen, spreading the material at the same time. Now you could have forged the blade to more of a point if you like. I don't always do that because I can dress it down afterwards. Now on the original trowel, as excavated, it had quite a rounded tip. I don't actually know if that's just a result of corrosion or damage during use, or if it was actually designed like that, but I reproduced it like that anyway. So when I've spread it to the correct width, which is 80mm, I will just stretch it out lengthways to reach 90mm, which is the length which I measured on the archaeological drawing. So at this stage you want to keep giving it a good scrub, because any scale on there is going to mark the material as you forge it, and we're just going to get rid of those cross peen marks. Now I've actually turned it upside down, and the face of the anvil will take out the marks better than the hammer. And then just get those last marks out by turning it the right way up. So you can see how thin it is by how quickly it's cooling where I'm hammering. This isn't particularly an issue at this stage because it's going to allow me to planish the material as I go along. And I'll just give the edges a bit of a dressing. So where it's quite thin it risks bending, so keep an eye on that. Make sure you don't turn it over and gall it. So just round that point. And again, make sure you keep out all hammer marks. So at this stage I will start drawing out the tang because the blade of the trowel is pretty much finished. And this is just a case of going in with a heavy wide-faced hammer and drawing out the material. And you can see how I'm turning it constantly. That's to make sure that I have a nice square section. So at this stage you want to keep quenching it off, keep quenching off the thin parts like the point of the tang and the edges of the blade, because they will overheat and they will burn. And in fact, as I was adjusting the camera settings to get decent footage, like a fool, I managed to burn a bit of the blade of the trowel, but we shan't talk about that much. So I'm letting the heat bleed out at this stage, and that'll allow me to planish the material. Get it nice and smooth, fairly unattractive if it's rougher than a badger's bum. So from doing the set down, we've got some artifacts either side of the blade, so we'll just do a sideways set down, 45 degrees, take those out. That'll allow us to dress the base of the blade as well. So at this stage, turn it so the tang is prominent above, and same as my upset corner demonstration, just bend it over and you should have a nice transition there after that. Now ideally I'd have quenched it off and that would have prevented that bend at the top if you quench it just above where you want to bend. I was in a rush and I didn't do it, so things seem to take twice as long when you're in a rush because you try and cut corners and end up spending more time on something. So don't be like me, quench it. So at this stage I want a bend 50mm above the blade of the trowel. Now because the material is about 10mm thick in that section, I actually made that 40mm long, and the bend will add the 10mm because of the thickness of the section. So here, having learnt my lesson from the previous bend, I am quenching off just above where I want it to bend. And go over to your anvil and smack it some. So try and do this bit with the flat of your hammer rather than the toe of your hammer, like I see a lot of people doing on these things. It'll just prevent marking the material. So we want a little bit of an angle on that. Not too much, but just a bit. And give it a straighten. It wasn't really worth reheating it to straighten it at this stage. I just went for it, flattened it, took out any hammer marks. And final thing, I don't know if this would have been authentic or not, but I think a trowel with slightly rough edges wouldn't be much use of a trowel. There's that burnt bit, by the way. So I'll just touch the sides with the file just to make it a little bit useful as a trowel. And on the underside as well, just take off any flashing from filing the profile. So I didn't go mad with the filing, I literally just straightened it a little bit. Took out any dings or marks. Same on the underside. And here we have a reproduction of a medieval trowel. So I think it's a little bit later than the Anglo-Saxon period, so it's not my usual historical period of choice. But it is a reproduction, it's wrought iron, and it's fairly close to the original. So blade sizes are perfect. Tang's a little bit too long, but there we go. So thanks for watching. Giving a like or leaving a comment. You can also help me out on Patreon if you like. Entirely up to you. Here's my current list of Patreon donors. Thanks a lot, guys. It's quite humbling how many of you are actually donating now, so thanks a lot. Next week we're going to be moving on to a larger project for those of you who've hung around till the end credits. I won't say what it is now, but I did this as quite a simple video in order to prepare for the bigger project, so see you then. Bye.